I'm Sid, CEO and co-founder at GitLab, and I'm here today with Nicolas and Vlad from QuestDB, and we're going to talk about open source startups and all the things that come with running that. Nicolas, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a co-founder and CEO of QuestDB. And prior to QuestDB, I used to work in financial services at Nasdaq Rothschild, and then at a fintech startup called Blockchain. And that's where we all met, the three co-founders of QuestDB, prior launching the company.
Cool. Vlad?
Hi guys, I'm Vlad, and also co-founder. I'm a CTO at QuestDB. I started developing this project in 2013, and then we started a company a year ago to make it a success, hopefully.
Cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think Nicolas has the first question.
Sure. So this is really about sort of shifting from one focus to another. So right now we're building a community which is growing pretty fast. To put it in comparison, we're nowhere near the sort of users that you had before raising money, which I read somewhere was about 100K users. So the question would be, for how long would you sort of purely focus on the community side before thinking about enterprise adoption? And would you think there are some indicators that would suggest the company should start focusing more on enterprise and building a sales team?
Yeah, those are great questions. First of all, we weren't at 100,000 users. We were at 100,000 installations, and we call 100,000 organizations at the time. So it was quite significant scale. And I was fortunate that I had previous startups. So I was able to self-finance. I put $100,000 of my own money, and that's a position that not everyone is in. So totally understandable if you have to focus on monetization earlier. You say focus on enterprise, and I think that's something we did from the start, even when we were open source. So we always kind of catered to the needs of larger customers. And for us, it was because larger customers were more likely to want their infrastructure to be self-managed instead of depending on a SaaS service from another provider. So I think what you mean is like focusing on kind of a paid model, like an open core model where you start making the paid features. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, correct.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's totally cool. Like the sooner you can start with monetization, the better. I think it's more important to make sure you're a good steward of the open source community while you monetize than delaying it. I think the trick is to do both. And at GitLab, we're really proud that, for example, when we started monetizing, the number of contributions every month was under 100. Now they're sometimes over 300. So like the community has grown since we started monetizing. So I think what you don't want, and what's very common for open source projects, is that you lose the community as soon as you start monetizing. There's if you Google GitLab stewardships, there's some links on that page, and those will give you an indication of things you can do wrong. And as long as you don't do that, they actually help each other, because the community is not going to put as much attention to performance and security updates and dependency updates as a commercial company would. So I think it's helpful, and they reinforce each other. So no need to wait with monetization. Just be very mindful of what you monetize, how you monetize, what promises you make to the community.
Cool, thank you.
I can ask a second question if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Cool. Yeah, the second question is about kind of priorities. If we have a fairly significant number of non-paying users, community members asking for a set of features versus enterprise customer or potential customer asking or needing an enterprise feature, And we kind of, considering the size of our team and complexity of these features, we may not necessarily be able to do both at the same time. And this is a question, basically, how would you sort of juggle this, these conflicting priorities?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Right now at GitLab, we have, I think, 65% of our groups are focused more on paid features, and 30% of our groups are focused exclusively on open source features. Now, the paid groups, some of their features will be paid and some of them will be open source. So all in all, more than half of what we ship, if you look at release posts, on average, I think more than half is open source. Now, what you do, I would set a goal, a growth goal. And if you're early in the startup, as I understand you are, a metric that Y Combinator, for example, uses is 10% revenue growth week over week, which is a very ambitious and high goal, and it's very hard to achieve. And then figure out what you need to do. And probably your hearts are in the right places, so probably it's going to be a bit painful, where you do focus a little bit more on the features where there's the customer asking for them. One nice thing is that it offers the community a chance to step in. So if you're always building the next step that the community wants, you'll always be on the hook for that. If you have a community developing, they can step in. For example, the GitLab container registry is now a big smashing success, but we started with, you can have only one type of container per project, and was obviously a shortcoming. But we shipped it and everyone was like, oh, we need that. And we're like, that's totally obvious that you need that, but we're not going to spend time. And at some point, someone said, okay, I need it so much, I'm going to make it myself. And it was a big undertaking, and someone did that. So that's one of the advantages. But all in all, it's like the tough decisions. Where do you allocate your effort? And there's not a one-size-fits-all answer, but I hope I gave some of the guidelines that we use today.
Thank you, Sid. That's very interesting. More of a personal one, if you don't mind. What are the top 3 mistakes you made in the early days that you would try to avoid if you had to do it all over again?
Yeah, I think we had kind of a double whammy for GitLab.com, where we underinvested in it, and at the same time had a very attractive, and still have a very attractive, free tier. So we get tons of users coming in, consuming a ton of compute, needing for us to do a ton of scaling work, while we didn't apply appropriate resources, like not enough development effort. To this day, like I was just looking at issues. I have some pages on GitLab.com on the 99% latency. It's not good, and we're still improving it. I go back, I'd invest more, but also not have as many, or maybe not at all, permanently free accounts, because they're a big drain on our resources, and on they require a lot of investment to make it scale better.
And just following up this actually question, it's not on the list, but it's similar. So what do you think about paywalls? Would you kind of just erect a paywall on the website, or do you think it's a bad idea? Might be a bad idea to do it.
Yeah, paywalls come in all kinds of sorts and sizes. 2 things on our stewardship promises page. We say, hey, we're never going to even ask for your email in order to download and start using the product. And then another common use of paywalls is for downloading content. So if you're on the website and you want to download a white paper or something like that, and we found that the technical audience, it's probably not a great fit. It's probably better to have your content more widely out there and have a little bit less ways to get back in touch with someone.
Thank you. Yeah, this is another kind of hypothetical question, really. So if you were to start a kind of brand new open source project, would be your top 3 things, if possible, that you would kind of focus on right away?
Yeah, I can tell you what performance indicators to focus on. We're running a brand new open source project at GitLab. It's called Meltano. It's a data project specifically focused on the ELT part of the life cycle. It's run by a single person. And we agreed that the best metric was the number of people active in the Slack channel. Because kind of just like our company kind of moved to Slack, communities are also moving to Slack, and activity there is the best leading indicator. After that, I would probably switch to kind of how many contributions that we merge. And after that, would start focusing on revenue generated, or maybe users as an intermediate and then revenue generated.
What would you find as impressive in terms of active users on Slack? Because that's something we see a lot. We have a lot of users coming on our Slack, asking a lot of questions, being very active. And we never thought that this would be a sort of metric that could impress people. So yeah, very interesting for us to go Cherry, what you think is impressive there.
Okay, I think over 500 is impressive, and over 1,000 is really impressive.
Okay. So in terms of just people actively sort of at least once a week asking questions.
Something like that. Yeah, there's some kind of active user graph. I haven't really given in to what it says. I think it's weekly active.
Right. Cool, thank you. Yeah, so this one is about partnerships. So we saw that you have a dedicated technology partnership page. And actually right now we are exploring partnerships with other open source projects. And if you were in your shoes, how much time and effort would you dedicate towards such partnerships? Do you think they're important to accelerate adoption of the product and also to try to find use cases for companies?
Yeah, in general, startups focus on partnerships too early. They focus on them, like they try to form partnerships with big commercial companies, and all of these companies will talk with them because it's just interesting. The big company is learning about the market. Founders are fun to talk to. Like these people are like full-time paid to pay with other companies, and founders tend to be interesting and have interesting opinions. But they're never going to take a risk because you're small. So why do a partnership? Because a partnership is kind of a stamp of approval from them. Why put a stamp of approval on a startup that might go out of business any moment now? So wouldn't focus there. What is interesting is that you said partnership with open source projects. Now that's interesting. I think that makes a ton more sense, especially technical partnerships. Like these products are integrated and you both put up a blog post. And especially for your database, which is like super high performance, throw all the data into it, you probably have a couple of sources and you probably have a couple of common kind of downstream dashboarding tools. Makes sense. If you can get something with, I don't know, on the Prometheus blog, for there's now a good exporter to your database, and something on the, I don't know, Metabase blog about like how it's now super easy to use QuestDB underneath that. That's probably great marketing and totally worth your time.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we have a couple of those kind of projects who are willing to do blog posts together with us and webinars. Are there other mediums you think are powerful in this context?
Yeah, I think blog posts and Twitter seems to be still like the way that developers communicate. Even Medium post, although like it's waning, but still happening. And then as soon as you go to more like revenue generating things, webinars become more important. Buyers are typically more oriented towards webinars.
Cool.
Thanks.
I think we run out of questions in the list. Vlad, do you have anything on top of your mind?
No. Probably Nick can talk about the YC initiative. Maybe that's cool.
Yeah. We launched a sort of OSS initiative at YC for all OSS YC companies basically alongside Jared. And we're trying to do sort of once a month group office hours. So trying to replicate the office hours we had, but just for OSS companies, and trying to perhaps have special guests every month to trying to learn about specific topics that, you know, are particularly challenging for our type of companies. And we wonder whether you'd be keen to join for one of those office hours in the future.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'll be up for that.
Really cool. Thank you.
Cool. Can I ask something about QuestDB? Like, there's so many databases around. Like, how is QuestDB different? Like, it's super high performance. That seems to be what it's about. But like, what's the secret sauce? Not secret sauce. Like, what? How do you achieve that? What are the? And everything is a trade-off. What did you do to make it so fast?
Okay, so I guess in a nutshell, the performance obviously is from kind of my experiences usually is a function of control. So we built everything from scratch. It's not based on any particular storage engine, or we don't use libraries, and the components are tightly fitting together. So that's basically kind of general premise. And I guess the specialization of the database is a secret source. It's a time series database kind of designed to take in basically data. Well, the idea is that the order of data that goes in a database, it comes out in the same order as well as data comes in and out. And it makes if you store data contiguously in a timestamp order, it makes it easier and faster to calculate to do the time range searches, do the time-based aggregation, sampling, and stuff like that. So because data is contiguously stored, it's also column-oriented storage. So we do not lift the data that doesn't need to be lifted from disk. So, and most of the performance is basically through accessing memory directly. And on top of that, we kind of integrate with hardware quite tightly. So we use all of the SIMD instructions to speed up aggregation, and there's a huge parallelization going underneath as well. So that's the secret sauce.
So if I contrast that with TimescaleDB. TimescaleDB is Postgres based. You have a custom engine. TimescaleDB is row oriented. You're column oriented. So if I just need one data point in a set, for example, for a sense I store like 100 attributes, you only need to lift that one thing, while a row oriented engine would have to lift all hundreds because it lifts row by row.
That's right. Yeah, this is kind of very typical of column stores. Yeah, and this is what we do. But we also provide we provide access, both column based access, and if you need row based access, you can have that as well. So we can traverse basically the set whichever direction that we need to. So that's the idea. And the time scale is basically we find that Postgres engine the basically is a constraining factor for time series database, because if you put time series data in Postgres, you're gonna have to index it. So you have to have data stored separately and then reorder it basically in the index.
Yeah, you got a couple of writes on every piece of data ingest.
Yeah, exactly. You write it in multiple places. You write complexities or log n rather than append, for example, which could be O1 if everything goes well. Your read becomes basically random memory read rather than sort of sequential memory read. You keep reading this point, that point, this point, this point, that kind of stuff. So it's all sort of becomes inefficient hardware wise.
Cool.
And we try to tie that to the hardware more.
One more nerdy question, but it says on your homepage that it's written in C++ and zero garbage collection Java.
Yeah.
How do you do zero garbage collection on Java? Like, is it C++ or I need both? Like, do I need to run a JVM?
We basically the product that we ship is a jar file. It's like a 3 megabyte jar. So you need Java to run it. So the C library is bundled with the jar inside it. and we call it basically kind of transparently. We bundle 4 different binaries depending on what we pick it at runtime, depending on operating system. So there's one for Linux, Windows, macOS, FreeBSD, and there's one for ARM as well. So that's one thing. And the 0GC comes from because we kind of changed, we rewritten all of the collections that we use. So we kind of use Java for VM itself. We don't use Java libraries to interact with the data.
Cool. You're not instantiating new objects all the time, so there's no garbage collection that needs to happen.
Exactly, yeah. So we sort of instantiate some of the objects because it's difficult not to. But along the data path, so the data lives off heap, so to speak. So it's not in Java heap itself; it's in physical memory. And any data processing pipeline does not instantiate anything at all. So you make kind of like, for example, if you compile a text query into an executable object, that's going to be an object created which gets executed.
That makes sense. I still need a JV. So it's only 3 megabytes for the entire jar file. That's super impressive. But I still need a JVM, which is like a giant honking thing, or not anymore. I'm sorry, I'm a Ruby programmer.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah, we kind of find most people sort of download jar without JVM, and so this jar can be like, you can embed it in a Java application as well if you wanted to, and run database embedded. But also in Java 11, you have basically like a program called JLink. So what that does basically, it creates a stripped down version of a VM and packages it together with the jar. So the whole downloadable thing, in this case, you don't really need VM. We provide a package called like runtime package, and that's 15 megabytes. Like it's including everything in it, you know.
That's super cool. And what is the most common use case? Is it Internet of Things data, like devices, or is it more kind of server data, which like a Prometheus would typically be?
Yeah, it's funny that we find our use cases come from sort of finance background. So it's basically more of a market data analysis. So there's quite a few users basically from that sort of space, and more we kind of finding that there's a database called InfluxDB that's basically sort of it's a DevOps data.
We're familiar with it. It wasn't performant enough for our application, so I could see a big market there. But I'm surprised that you're already kind of API compatible or drop-in compatible alternative, because Influx has a ton of features. So tell me more.
Yeah. This is what we're trying to do. We kind of open source and community focused alternative for Influx, and you can we support the line protocol that sort of all of the Influx sending tools used to send data to Influx. We can ingest that sort of without any changes to the sending part, and we provide SQL on other end, so you can query your data using proper SQL. And also because of the way we have storage engines separate from all the connectors, we also have Postgres wire connector, so you can have a scenario where something sends data to Influx, like Internet of Things data, and then you can programmatically attach another application over Postgres protocol that could be adding data to it or querying it or whatever else.
Sorry, so let me get this right. So I have a server and it sends data by the InfluxDB protocol. It's received by QuestDB. QuestDB queries out to Postgres, gets additional data, and then stores it?
It's the other way around. So you can use a Postgres driver to query QuestDB and receive, kind of see the data that is sent over Influx line protocol. So you can daisy chain it in the Postgres database using like a foreign database API and have Postgres connect to us.
That is super cool. It seems super hardcore. Like you talked about like assembly, and like most of the new databases is like, oh, we use RocksDB or something else on a lower level. But this seems, is this really like built from the ground up? without
yeah. It's got no dependencies whatsoever. But this is why it's possible to make it faster, because we don't really need to, for example, conform to an API we cannot change. Like if we control everything, we don't, for example, can avoid data copying so from one API to the other. And if anybody writing traditional application will have to kind of like have an object coming from one end, transform it, send it to the other end to different API. We have none of that because we wrote everything ourselves.
Cool.
So that's the idea.
I think that with finance, you have an interesting beginning of your market. It's easy to get locked into finance, so it's a bit careful. But for now, it's just like start generating revenue. What do you think will be the first feature you monetize that you'll charge money for?
Ooh, I'll let Nick answer that.
Yeah, just before going on that, I think finance is definitely an area we're interested in. The thing is, the sales cycle in finance is pretty long, especially at those large banks. So, a space that we found.
Yeah, it depends where. Like if you get a quant at Renaissance Group, at Renaissance that says I need this, then the purchasing cycle is really slow. Is really fast.
Yeah.
They were asking.
Vlad, one thing we found in some of those shops, that there tends to be a sort of build against buy mentality.
Sure.
So, you want to build it yourself, and this makes you believe that you have an edge, right? Because you built it yourself. So there is like a tendency to not buy stuff for that reason.
Yeah, the typical, the people that would typically buy like quickly are building.
Yeah, so we saw that, with a few companies, not to say it's all of them, but yeah. But, observability, where you have events, and that could be, in DevOps, that could be like application metrics. We see a lot of interest right now, and there is really a pull from users in that space. And this is definitely somewhere, we want to capitalize to sort of spur adoption, because there really seems to be a need from those users at the moment. And then, as you said, there is like IoT, which is a big space. And that means a lot of things. Anyway, so about the monetization, right now we're building 2 types of replication, one of which is going to be high performance replication. I don't know if Vlad wants to go through it because it's fairly technical. But that is one piece we might want to include in our enterprise version, which is going to be, basically open core model. And the idea is that developers use the open source product, which is for free. And then there is the pull, a push, in those companies from the developers to use QuestDB across the entire organization. And at that point, the company will need certain features, in order to really run QuestDB at scale, especially if the organization is super large. And that's when, we would come in with the enterprise version and sell it to perhaps the
It makes total sense. Then you're talking about the director of IT who's like, hey, we need a replication strategy for this, and we need the fastest thing. Yeah, that seems like a great first feature to monetize. And I love that you will have 2 replication strategies. So there are some products who have not been very successful at saying, oh, you can only replicate if you pay for it. And I think that's detrimental. I think but if you invest a lot of time in making a faster replication strategy, I think that's a great thing to monetize. So well done on finding the balance there on the first feature.
Thank you.
You see, yeah.
Conscious about time, guys. Are we running out of time?
I think we have another 10 minutes if there's more questions.
Oh, cool.
Oh, no, there's not. I think there was a mistake in the calendar invite. So thanks. This was a joy. And see you soon at the office hours at YC OSS.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.